So I am Jewish. I am specifically a Reform Jew. So there are different branches of Judaism. The three major ones are Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform. And I was raised and am still a Reform Jew. The differences, if you're interested, um, Reform Judaism began in about the 1820s or 30s, and we have a lot of rituals and traditions, and there was an idea that there was a disconnect between why these rituals were important. So originally they cut everything. They cut all the traditions, all the rituals. They took out all the Hebrew. Everything was done in the vernacular. It was started in Germany, so everything was done in German, whatever country. And slowly they realized that that actually sort of divorced people from their Judaism. It could have been anything. So they started adding some of the traditions back, but we are, and so now it's, 150 years later, more, almost 200 years. And we have quite a few of the traditions and rituals back, but the ones that we think make sense. We do not keep kosher, although I personally don't eat pork because it feels like a slap in the face to my ancestors. So I don't eat pork. But Reform Jews don't keep kosher. They're just different things. We just are, that kind of thing. We don't keep the Sabbath with the Orthodox Jews do. Like they won't do any work from Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown. So we believe that in a modern world that isn't really possible. So that's how it goes. Now it's the Orthodox Jews are what I think people think of when they think of, dress related issues in terms of Judaism. And I was not raised in that tradition at all, but there are still garments that we wear. So there is something called a talit, or that's the Hebrew pronunciation. Talis is Yiddish. It's a prayer shawl. I actually have mine, if you'd like to see it. I got it for my bat mitzvah. Now, that is not something Orthodox Jewish girls would get. It is a, quote, a boys/men's garment. But in the Reform tradition, women have started wearing them as well. So you can see that there are always fringes on the end. There is a prayer that you say before you put it on. And then you wear it around your shoulders when you are at synagogue in the morning. It's a morning thing, or nighttime at Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippur is the holiest holiday in the calendar. So that is it. Mine is white, but at this point they come in like hundreds of styles and designs. They can be fancy, they can be plain. People get them in all different kinds of patterns, but they all have fringes. That's the important part. There's a prayer specifically about it. Orthodox men wear these nonstop, but Reform Jews, we wear them to pray. And not all Reform Jews, because again, the rituals that make sense. So you'll go to a Reform synagogue and some will be wearing it and some won't. There's also the kippah or the yarmulke. Everything has a couple of names because it's either Hebrew or Yiddish. And then of course the English. So in Hebrew, it's called a kippah. In Yiddish, it's called a yarmulke. And in English, it's just like the skull cap that you wear, which I also have, but I have never worn. This is also very much a man's garment. The idea is that you wear it to indicate that you know that no matter how much you learn, no matter how good a person you are, there's always something separating you from God, which I think is sort of interesting. Like, I like that. But it's very much a man's garment. There are, again, Jewish women in the Reform movement, and there are a couple of other branches we didn't discuss, but there are some women who wear them. I've never felt comfortable wearing it. Even when I'm wearing my talis, I've never felt comfortable wearing a yarmulke. I feel like that's sort of a bridge too far. Um, so I'm not sure why I draw that line there, but I've never worn one, and don't miss it. Other things. So when you go to synagogue, you want to make sure your shoulders are covered. Um, in generally your knees too, although some people are a little more lax with that. The more Orthodox women make sure their elbows are covered. Very Orthodox women also always wear stockings so that you can't see their legs. They never wear pants. I wear pants. I actually have my father's tallis clip. So you can see it has two little hands, and you clip it and it holds the tallis around your neck. My dad, I think, got this for his bar mitzvah. My dad is very unobservant, so he doesn't use this. But I like to use it. It makes me feel very happy. I wonder if my siblings know I have this. One of them will probably want it. But I really like having it, so I use that sometimes. Another thing that comes up a lot when people are talking about Jews and appearance are tattoos. There is some rumor that has very strong staying power that if you have a tattoo, you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. That is not true. So in Judaism, we have a pretty strong guideline about what happens to your body. You're not supposed to do anything elective to it. But that's pierced ears. Like, that's everything. No one has ever been denied that kind of sacrament for getting a tattoo. It is, however, one of the things that made Nazi tattoos so terrible, because there is a very specific law against changing the body. But that said, I actually do have a tattoo. Like, it's not really, it's actually a Jewish themed tattoo. I have the Tree of Life, which is a very common Jewish motif. I actually took the design from a manuscript, a Bible, an illustrated Torah from the 13th century. So the tattoo thing is a very weird thing. I don't know why it's stuck. That's like saying if you don't keep kosher, you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery, but of course you can, because you're still Jewish. So I'm not really sure where, like, nobody really knows but it is a myth. As a Reformed Jew, no, my everyday dress is not really influenced by my religion. I used to wear always, like, sleeping, showering, bathing, a Jewish star necklace. Then for a while I wore a hamsa, which is the hand of God. Sometimes I think Muslims refer to it as the hand of Fatima. But it's a really common symbol in a lot of religions, but Judaism. I stopped wearing it due to a personal issue that has nothing to do with Judaism, and I regret it. Actually, I still have it, and I wouldn't mind pulling it back out. But other than that, no, I don't. My personal dress as a Reformed Jew isn't really influenced by my Judaism. I think my heritage influences my curly hair. So I think that that's part of what my appearance takes from Judaism. There are maybe other things that people would point to in a more stereotypical and hurtful way, which is as hurtful as it would sound. But other than that, no, nothing that I do by choice, I think, is representative of Judaism. I learned about the connection between certain garments and Judaism from seeing them. We were a synagogue going family, so we went to synagogue every Friday night, and my mom still does. And so you see people wearing things and you figure out what they're for. And then you see them. So the talises come in bags. So you see them come with the bag to synagogue, take the tallis, say the prayer, usually kiss the little band, put it on, and at the end, fold it back up and put it in the bag. So you see that enough and you figure out what it's for. Also, there's a very specific prayer about it. So it actually makes sense. The same thing is true. This isn't dress, but it's what we call a mezuzah. It's the little thing we have on the door jamb. That is, again, you see it every time you go to a Jewish house. So, but also there's a very specific prayer about it. So as you're learning these things in Hebrew school, you figure out what they're for. Some things, so I went to a synagogue that only had Friday night services. We didn't do Saturday morning services. So men wore the tallis Friday nights, which is technically not the tradition. So I didn't find out until I was grown that isn't the tradition, because that's not how I grew up. So sometimes I Google things because I want to know more. I lived in New York. I grew up in Baltimore, and then I lived in New York. Both have very heavy Jewish populations. So you see people, you wonder what they're wearing, and you think about it. And, when you're exposed to things, it's sort of normal, and it just is what it is. So you learn it that way. It's a little important, I think, to talk about maybe the stereotypes. And I feel like that people get, I think, confused between the idea of a Jew and a New Yorker. And they have this stereotype of them being the same thing. So the way people talk, I think, can be used against them, and the way people look, which is disappointing. And of course, it comes with certain baggage that certain people have about what a Jew is. So that's happened. People have yelled things at me, and it's problematic in a lot of ways. So it's interesting because, but it's something that I've been struggling with recently, that when people, like surveys ask what you are, I get that question, what are you? So it's like people can tell that I'm not quite white. So I get that. I've had people come up and speak to me in Spanish. That I don't mind. I don't speak Spanish at all, but I get that, especially if I'm a tan. But the what are you thing is always fun. And I know what they're asking. But I usually say I'm Polish, which is not something I claim, because the Poles did some pretty bad things to my family. So I certainly wouldn't claim to be, and they wouldn't claim me. But in that instance, I usually say that because I want to see how they dance around it. And then if I finally say I'm Jewish, they're like, oh, I see. I thought so. Which is so annoying. So I've been struggling recently, last year or so, really, about on surveys when they ask ethnicity, what to say. I think it might have to do with the current political climate also, but I don't feel white and what that means in America. I know I pass, I present, except then sometimes I don't, because people are like, what are you? So it's a tricky thing. And who we are, I think, is more than our religion, which obviously people think so. But it's a tricky thing, navigating this in America.